and thanks for joining me this morning here on Good Morning Central Oregon. I'm Kristi Miller. On the program today, David Roselle is back from Roselle Wealth Management. He's going to talk about the financial roller coaster that has been this last year. Also, Pam Beasley, Executive Director of the Sun River Music Festival, has details on their Home for the Holidays concert. And we'll have another edition of What's Cooking with Chef Lisa Glickman. But first, I have two doctors in the house today. Dr. Sondra Marshall, she is a neuropsychologist at St. Charles Behavioral Health, and Dr. Viviane Ugalde is a specializes in physical medicine and rehabilitation for the center and the Center Foundation. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, Dr. Ugalde, first to you, concussion identification. Are we seeing more cases of concussion because we are better able to identify this, or are kids playing harder sports? I mean, what does that look like?
I think it's probably more of an increased awareness issue. I think before kids would get concussed, they would sort of blow it off. They wanted to keep playing. And now that we have more and more knowledge about the long-term consequences of concussions, I think parents are more aware, the players are more aware, and I think that all benefits the kids in the long run to report that and get treatment. So with concussion identification, how are we doing that now? Well, we have the athletic trainers that the Center Foundation sponsors in most of the area high schools in Central Oregon, and they're there at the field for all of the games and available during the practices as well. So if the athlete gets injured, the athletic trainer is made aware of that. If not overtly, then the athlete will come to them, and they are evaluated at that point and then referred on to Dr. Sondra Marshall's for further evaluation and our concussion clinics and that sort of thing. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring you in, Dr. Marshall, and talk about the management of that. So once a student has been identified and they go through that and then they come to you, what happens?
Well, there's a couple of steps even along the way. So once they're identified as having a concussion, the athletic trainers, who are really our man on the field, literally and figuratively, they contact the parents. They contact typically the nurses at the schools to let the nurses know that the student sustained a concussion, so that word goes out to teachers that we might have to do some accommodations in the school. Some students might be taken to the ER depending on their symptoms. Some parents like to get their primary care physician involved, and a lot of them refer them back to us. Neuropsychologists, so myself and my colleague Dr. Leah Schock, have been really developing this program along with the Center and the Center Foundation. And we use a variety of tools. Number one is our clinical interview, trying to get a better understanding of the injury itself and then the accompanying symptoms. We also use a program called IMPACT, which is a neurocognitive tool that's computerized that all of our high school athletes in identified sports get baselined with, and then we'll do a follow-up to see is there any change in these kind of areas that are sensitive to concussion, such as memory, reaction time, processing speed, and that gives us some indicators along with just the athlete themselves as well as the parent, what's going on. And then we make kind of environmental changes for that student, both in the home and at school, such as we say, okay, no video games, no texting, and no phone, which parents love, the students hate. And then we make adjustments for the student in school to really allow that student the most opportunity to kind of maximize their recovery time.
It really sounds to me like the Center Foundation, and St. Charles Behavioral Health have this very much like a team-based approach to helping these students. Definitely. I think, you know, where I become involved in some of the other physicians is if a student is really struggling with some of the symptoms of concussion, like daily headaches and trouble sleeping, that sort of thing. So physicians, psychologists, trainers, therapists, we all get involved to help the student recover and make the best possible transition back into school and work activities. Well, we also want to talk about a Youth Sports Concussions Conference, which is happening on April 21st. Why is this important?
Well, it's important, number one. Let me even backtrack and say that for the last 10 years, this community, because of the Center Foundation, Dr. Belza, has really had a concussion program, probably longer than any town west of the Mississippi. And because of that, there's a lot of education, but there's still a lot of misinformation. So something that we've been working towards for the last 5 years is to really bring a world-class concussion conference to our community to, number one, educate our community, but as well as to push out education to our rural communities so that they know how to manage kids with concussion. Because of a law called Max's Law, which came on the books July last year, 2010, there's now a rule that we have to manage concussions. If a student is suspected of sustaining a concussion, they have to be pulled from the game or practice right there and then and cannot return until a healthcare provider clears them. And yet a lot of healthcare providers don't sometimes understand the nuances of that. And so this is really bringing them up to date with all the newest research out there and understanding of how to do that, and then also supporting schools. How do you manage these kids?
So you're looking for folks not only from our community, but really sounds like from all over the state, all over the region. They're still playing football in those smaller towns.
And soccer, and basketball, and wrestling, and so we're really hoping to do an outreach to all of Central and Eastern Oregon, and because of the person we're bringing in, we're probably going to get people from just all over, if not even Idaho, who will hear of it.
Who are you bringing in?
We're bringing in a gentleman by the name of Kevin Guskowitz. He is a PhD athletic trainer from the University of North Carolina, and he just won the Genius or McCarthy Award for his research in the area of concussions, where he had sensors in helmets and really did real-time what does a concussion look like in real time. And it's because of his work with concussions that the whole game of football at the NFL level has really changed. So we're just really fortunate to have someone of that caliber come to our community.
Well, and this conference is so important. I mean, concussions, people, you know, I think back in the day, you know, we used to just kind of, oh, they'll be fine, they'll be fine. You know, we didn't seek treatment, we just kind of shook it off and got back and played. But people die.
Yes, I mean, I think the catastrophic consequence of an unrecognized concussion is that a young athlete will go back into a game concussed, have another impact, and then have catastrophic swelling of the brain and die. It's called second impact syndrome. And before, I mean, 10 years ago when I was doing sports medicine, we had these Colorado rules and all these things where you'd do these sideline assessments and have the athlete spend some time out of the game, and then you'd say, okay, run some wind splints, go ahead, you can go back in. And I had a personal experience with a high school athlete when I was still in residency, where I evaluated him, I followed all of those rules, I sent him back in, and I watched him get a second hit, and he was out unconscious, his pupils were dilated, and I thought, oh my God, this is it. And luckily for the athlete and his family, he recovered, he was fine, there were no long-term consequences, but just that experience alone is enough to say, really, when a kid is concussed, he should be pulled from the game, he or she, and evaluated properly, and you know, have their impact scores compared and be sent to the neuropsychologist. So it's really a big deal to prevent that tragic consequence.
It absolutely is. We want to make sure that people are aware if they'd like more information about the impact, the baseline concussion testing, or any of the programs that are available here in Central Oregon. The CenterOregon.com is the website, and 541-382-3344 for more information. So it was really nice to see you both this morning. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. We'll be right back.